She joins us now. Very good morning to you, Angela. Look, it seems as though we're going nuclear big time. I just wonder if that's going to help the problem in the short term.
Yes, I think it was expected that we would go nuclear big time because a combination of nuclear and particularly wind energy will give us the energy security that certainly the recent problems between Russia, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and the problems of the gas wholesale market have shown is necessary. The question that you rightly pose, though, is that nuclear generators can take a long time to build and are very expensive. And that's why I note that in what has been said so far, there has been something of a focus on the small-scale nuclear power stations rather than the huge ones that we've had in the past. And I think that's a very important thing to think about, because these small-scale nuclear reactors, of which Rolls-Royce is one of the designers, I believe Elon Musk has got an investment in them as well, these can be built much quicker. They're also repeatable, and the cost is much lower. So I suspect that whilst the number may be 8 in total, that is referencing the large nuclear reactors, and some of that number will in fact, or that quantum of power, will in fact be made up by these small, repeatable nuclear reactors, which, as I say, are more likely to be able to get external investment because they're cheaper and they're quicker from starting to dig in the ground to the point at which you can switch them on.
Okay. Angela, from what I remember about you, you are a woman of action. You're your own mini little power station yourself as to things you want getting done. Is this a strategy at all, or is this just a mishmash of pleasing people? We're with wind, we're solar, we're fracking, we're, I don't know, it's all over the place, joining into the network of power distribution around the country. None of this is going to solve the energy crisis at the moment. None of this is going to solve the bills that are coming through people's letterboxes. What is your overall view? What should be done?
There never was an ability to suddenly magic new sources of energy quickly. Much of the strategy that we're looking at now is, in my view, a strategy that should have been decided some 6-10 years ago. Successive governments, I'm afraid, have put energy to one side. Yeah, they've focused on shutting down coal-fired power stations and building wind, and that's right. But they've never focused on the security piece, and they've always assumed that the wholesale price of gas around the world was going to remain low, and therefore they could take their time. And so we've poddled along, whether it was under Ed Miliband when he was Energy Secretary, Ed Davey when he was, and indeed now. So yes, to actually make a big decision which says this is what we're going to do, both in the supply of electricity, but also in respect of use of gas for gas central heating, because that's what the hydrogen piece in this policy is all about, is a good thing. Dealing with today, well, right now, the only way that you can actually assist on the cost of energy is by financial intervention by government to the poorer ends of society. That's the only way that you can do something quickly. In a relatively short period of time, it's about increasing more gas out of the North Sea, both from existing wells, but by digging new wells as well, because that'll get us more gas over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The fracking proposition, we should have actually run a proper, controlled, environmental trial on fracking some time ago, but a stop was put on that, and I think that's a pity. Inside the whole of energy are a lot of people with a lot of emotional commitments, either to one thing or another. Stand back, put the scientists in charge, the technologists in charge, and then what you have is a good long-term plan. And I would argue that all politicians need to get off their emotional high ground on this, because there's a long-term problem for the UK. That's what this energy strategy addresses. There's a medium problem in the UK, that is more gas locally, and North Sea, looking at fracking, some of that can deal with that problem. And the very short term is exactly the one that you say, what do you do about people's bills And the answer is, if you're earning reasonable money, like, dare I say it, you and me, and no doubt many people watching this broadcast, we're going to have to actually pay for it. And for the poorer end of societies, we've got to help them out of the...
Angela, I just want to get your views on onshore versus offshore wind farms. There's apparently a bit of a cabinet disagreement on this. What could you see as being the pros and cons? And you know, we're up here in Manchester. It's been really windy overnight. We're up on the 23rd floor. It seemed to me it would have been a great night to generate some energy. You know, where do we stand on that?
We've probably been generating a lot of electricity by wind overnight. The onshore-offshore debate, yes, you're right. As far as I'm aware, all the rumours and all the commentary say it happens in cabinet, but by goodness, it's happening in the country. And one of the things that the political classes need to do is reflect what happens in the country. And there is a lot of concern about onshore wind, but at the same time, I'm sure there are some communities where, you know, there's sufficient barriers. You can put the onshore wind, you know, over the top of the hill or whatever, where actually you can put a package together and say, you know, those communities are prepared to accept it. If that's the case, I say go ahead. Much of the offshore wind is more expensive to build, of course, and it's rather more complicated. You've got to attach it to the grid, and the grid that we built in the country went straight down the middle, linking up all the coal-fired power stations which sat on their coal fields, and then they went out to the side where we had the nuclear power. So when you build offshore, you've got quite a big problem. It can take quite a long time to connect it to the grid. Now, I note that part of the proposition is to have a separate organisation that looks at these things and cuts through some of the complexities. I think that is quite right. But if you come back to your original point, offshore versus onshore, the answer is both, but onshore can only be where the communities are prepared to accept them. And I know that some of the wind generators have been suggesting that you put a package together in which a local community gets a reduction in its own electricity costs. That might be something that's got some legs as well. But what I'm not in favour of is imposing large onshore wind farms against local people's wishes.
OK. Well, I think if we could attach you to the national grid, Angela Knight, we could solve a lot of the problems.
Dynamo.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.